We've got just under 2 weeks left of the IRS voluntary disclosure program for the ERC. A lot of tax professionals are probably seeing in their tax return work clients who filed for this program where they weren't involved and they definitely weren't expecting it. And they're wondering, how can I go about seeing whether or not this client is actually eligible for the program and should they pursue something like the VDP? Now, to start off with, the VDP is a fantastic program to help get people back into compliance for quarters that did not qualify by allowing them to pay back 80% of the credit instead of a full 100%. And in addition to this, the IRS is not assessing interest and penalties for the non-compliance once the client does the VDP program, which can be a really staggering amount. If the client waits until an inspection, the interest and penalties can get upwards of 50% of the credit depending on the timing. So you can really save your clients a lot by doing the program now. But how do you know whether or not the client is a potential candidate for this? And then how are they, is it worth pursuing? The first question is, who is the provider that did the work? We're seeing a lot of people that were pushed by payroll providers to do these filings just based on questionnaire answers and didn't really do due diligence related to the claim, where the client said that they determined that they were disrupted by government orders without any more due diligence done than that. So that's a big red flag. So how do you go about reviewing these claims to see if it's appropriate? You need to look at each quarter independently because this is a quarterly filing that's done for the VDP. And then you see, does the quarter actually qualify when you go through the testing parameters? And the first piece is this an aggregated claim? Does this organization actually need to be aggregated with other companies for me to do this eligibility testing? And then once you've determined that, then you can look at each revenue decline calculation to see, do they qualify under the revenue declines? Now we have a tool that you can use that will help you quickly work through that. But in addition to that, a lot of the companies that don't actually qualify for this, the main confusion is around qualification under government orders. So the first piece you want to look for is, did the provider actually do research on what government orders were in place that were disrupting? Do they have copies, PDF copies of the specific government orders that were being used? Because you want to review the actual language of the restrictions. Now, if the companies were subject to disruptions from government orders, but it wasn't restricting in nature, it was suggestions, best practices, recommendations, that's not going to rise to the level of a restriction for the qualification for this program. So you need to determine that language. You also need to determine that they have proof that the government orders were causing a 10% disruption in their ability to provide goods and services. And so general pandemic chaos and things like reductions in customer demand or employees wanted to stay home on unemployment, those don't rise to the level of a disruption that's going to qualify. It's really specific government orders that was forcing the organization to change operationally to be compliant, which reduced their ability to provide goods and services by 10%. Now, there's more nuance there, but that's just a quick way of explaining it. So if you have clients that are in this situation where they need to do an initial assessment to see whether or not they originally qualified for the program and that they have good grounds to qualify, you'll want to pursue getting the VDP program figured out and work with it, because if you can get a reduction in how much they have to pay back for quarters that weren't ineligible, that's going to be a huge savings for these clients instead of waiting until after the deadline. So there's more resources below from the IRS on how to participate in the VDP program and a contact form to get in touch with us if this is something that you don't feel comfortable with and clients need more support to figure out whether or not they were actually eligible for the ERC and how they should proceed based on the given facts and circumstances of their situation. So it's a wonderful program. We've got less than 2 weeks left. Take advantage of it if you can, because the IRS has said they will not be extending this.